Hi guys, I'm Ryan, and today I'll be talking to you about Chapter 25, Crime and Coercion. Crime and Coercion was based off a book in 2000 from Mark Colvin, who is an assistant professor of sociology at the George Mason University, where he teaches criminology. His theory of crime and coercion explains that coercion causes criminal behavior. This is based off a number of other theories, including Agnew's general strain theory, Cohen's social support theory, and Titel's control balance theory. Now, in his book, Colvin explains this an integrated theory of crime that's organized around social control. Colvin himself believes that control has two fundamental dimensions, each of which is envisioned as a continuum with two entirely different endpoints. The first is a degree of coercion where control can range from coercive to non-coercive. And the second is a degree of consistency with a range from consistent to erratic. By cross-tabulating these two dimensions into a 2x2 table, you get four control types, which is type number 1, non-coercive consistent control. Type 2 is non-coercive erratic control. Type 3 is coercive consistent control, and type 4 is consistent coercive erratic control. Before we get into the types, we have to look at coercion. Coercion occurs when one is compelled to act a certain way through either direct force or intimidation from others through the pressure of either economic or social forces. Interpersonal forms of coercion may or may not even involve the use of violence. It could involve the threat of actually taking away something of value, such as a person's job or any other social supports that is detrimental to that person's survival. Coercion could be seen as setting into motion the social psychological dynamics, usually sets as a precursor to chronic involvement in criminal behavior. Coercion creates strain in the form of anger, often contributing to weak, alienated social bonds, low self-efficiency, and if delivered on an erratic schedule, it will cause low self-control. Of the four types, now, the first two, types 1 and 2, non-coercive controls, can be characterized usually as consistent, firm, or fair. People can be either overly lenient or permissive, and at times, when it gets to it, erratic. Coercive, types 3 and 4, relations usually are consistently punitive or erratically punitive. Of each of the four types, each has a different social psychological outcome that has different effects on behavior. So we will start with type 1, which is non-coercive consistent, which is low anger, high self-efficiency, strong moral social bond, no coercive modeling, perceived control balance, and high self-control. Type 1 is a strong supporter of both expressive and instrumental needs when they're provided. It's least likely to produce a propensity for criminal or delinquent behavior, and is most likely to insulate the person from exploring pleasures of deviance. The social psychological outcome is strong predisposition for pro-social behavior and low probability of criminal behavior. That's not to say that a person in type 1 won't do crime. There has been people that do. Those are usually considered like white collar or just any other short-term offender. Usually these offenders soon desist from criminal behavior when their rationalization that supports their behavior breaks down and internal moral constraints reassert themselves. When you move to type 2, which is non-coercive erratic, you get low anger again, high self-efficiency, calculative social bond, no coercive modeling here, perceived control surplus, and low self-control, with the social psychological outcome of a predisposition for minor non-predatorial street crime or white-collar crime, strong tendency to explore deviant pleasures. Type 2 can be described as lenient, lax, even detached interest on the part of controller who intervenes erratically and weakly, provides a feeble, erratic social support which leads to little expressive support. At best, it could be used to manipulate another subject's behavior. Type 2 control predisposes a person to crime and delinquency, and it's less predatory since it's not anger-driven. With low self-control, they are likely to explore deviant, pleasurable experiences such as drug use, petty theft, sexual promiscuity, drinking, and other little minor acts. The combination of low self-control, intermediate calculative social bond, and a high self-efficiency allows a person to calculate pleasurable outcomes without having to neutralize guilt. When the negative costs begin to accumulate, such as personal health, relations with one another, or even freedom, they'll desist from criminal involvement likely, out of the rational calculation that the deviant pursuits are no longer worth it. Now, when we move over to the coercive side, we go to coercive consistency. That is high self-directed anger, low self-efficiency, weak calculative social bond, coercive modeling, perceived control deficit with feelings of resignation, and a rigid self-control. The social psychological outcome is a low probability of pro-social behavior, and a predisposition for mental illness, such as chronic depression. There is some potential for an enraged assault or homicide. Type 3 provides weak instrumental and expressive social order. The person's consistently met with punitive response when not complying with the rules. Behavior is rarely ignored, as well as rewards are rarely given with compliance. Control of relations highly external, since the person becomes fearful, submissive, depressed, and even powerless. Anger is directed inward towards themselves. They're not likely to create a predisposition for criminality because of close monitoring, but it does happen, as I've mentioned. And instead of crime, for the most part, this style of control is more likely to produce problems related to mental illness, as I said, and personal behavior such as the pursuit of an education or any activity that involves initiative or creativity usually becomes an issue. When we get to type 4, which is coercive erratic, it's again high other-directed anger towards other people, including authoritarian figures, usually low self-efficiency, weak alienated social bond, coercive modeling, perceived control deficit with feelings of debasement, and low self-control. For the social psychological outcome, it's a strong predisposition for a serious predatory crime and a strong probability of chronic criminality throughout their lifetime. For type 4, social support's weak. It's weak to non-existent. With this control, non-compliance is on an erratic basis, and it's either ignored or responded with harsh, punitive response. The social bond is highly negative, and it's based on alienation or open hostility towards others. Those with this control have low self-efficiency since they have little confidence in themselves. For those with type 4, crime tends to be impulsive, with little rational thought of cost or benefits of behavior. This differs from type 2, since the latter involves a higher degree of rational calculation. Produces a high probability of chronic criminality and tends to start at an early age, and it tends to end up committing serious predatory street crimes, including violent crimes. Now, these 4 types kind of comes back together. Coercive relations can appear in any number of settings, including workplaces, families, schools, usually among peers, and in-state bureaucracies such as welfare and even criminal